Hello everyone, my name is Poppy Phillips and I'm a Senior Marine Planner at the Marine Management Organisation, also known as the MMO. And today I'm going to be doing a bit of an update on the East Marine Plan replacement and what has been done on work on this so far in the past 12 months. Not 12 years, but 12 months. So before we get into the detail, what actually is marine planning to begin with? So as I'm sure you're aware, the marine environment is becoming increasingly busy and there is competition for space. And therefore we need a strategic management of the marine environment. And that is where marine planning comes in. So marine planning is the process used to manage the use of the marine resources in a sustainable and coordinated manner. We want to ensure that the right activities are happening the right way, at the right time and in the right place. And we also want to make sure that we're placing sustainable development at the centre of all decisions as well. So EastME and the East Marine Plan areas align very nicely. So the East Marine Plan area, as you can see on the screen, covers the area from Flambeau Head up in the north down to Felixstowe in the south. And it consists of an inshore and offshore marine plan area. So the inshore marine plan area goes from high mean water springs out to the 12 nautical mile limit, and then the offshore marine plan area goes from the 12 nautical mile out to the boundary with our European neighbours, Netherlands, Belgium and France. And again, just before getting into the details, what actually is a marine plan if you don't know what that is and haven't heard of it before. So the marine plans translate the marine policy statement into detailed policy and spatial guidance for each marine plan area. They aim to integrate national government priorities with what local stakeholders' priorities are also. And then within the plan we have marine plan policies. So these are grouped into various different themes. We have economic, environmental, social and also strategic. And there are also different types of marine plan policies, some which are spatial, so prioritising certain activities within certain areas, and also ones that are not spatial, so they cover the whole marine plan area. And the East Marine Plan was the very first marine plan that was adopted back in 2014. And as you can imagine, there has been a lot of contextual changes in legislation, which is why we are currently in the process of replacing it. So this slide also just depicts a little bit about the legislation behind the marine planning system. So we have, obviously, in 2009, the Marine and Coastal Access Act was introduced, and that provides the domestic legislative basis for the marine planning system. We then also have the Marine Policy Statement, which was adopted by all UK administrations in March 2011, which provided the policy framework for the preparation of all UK marine plans. And then before the Marine Plan was adopted, the Marine Policy Statement could also be used to inform decision-making in the absence of a Marine Plan as well. And within this framework, it is a statutory requirement to monitor and report to Parliament every 3 years on an adopted Marine Plan, which is led by ourselves, the MMO, and then every 6 years to monitor and report on the overarching all of the Marine Plans, which is led by DEFRA. And following the latest 3-yearly report, for the East Marine Plan, the Secretary of State agreed with the MMO's recommendation to replace the East Marine Plans. So that's a little bit about the legislation. We love a little bit of legislation. But this slide is showing what work has been done to date for the East Marine Plan in the past 12 months. So why we're all here as well talking about this. So for those who have been involved in marine planning before, you will recognise our marine planning wheel. We love to get out the MMO in our presentations, but this basically depicts the different stages of marine plan development and then its implementation and monitoring. So for the East Marine Plan replacement, what we did at the start of this is we had a statement of public participation that was agreed by the Secretary of State and then published in April 2024, so a bit before the last 12 months, but useful for some scene setting. And then since that time, we've undertaken issues with supporting evidence. So this is where we gather an evidence base on what all the issues are within the East Marine Plan area. And that will then help us to develop plan policies. And this is a really important step as we're able to identify those issues, but then also what evidence is out there and how it could then be used to help address these issues. We've also then started to work on the vision and objectives, so this is really the first part of where we're starting to look like what the plan could, how it could be developed and what it would look like. And what we did is we're using those issues and the evidence which we collected in the previous stage to then have those visions and objectives really looking to address those issues. Then we also undertook the options process, which I'm going to come on to in a bit more in-depth in a couple of slides. But that is really where we're looking at fundamentally how the plan will look. How could we be delivering these objectives in potentially different ways? Then we've also had a couple rounds of policy drafting. So this was just being an initial look at policy drafting. What would those policies be needing to cover? And then drafting a set of policies ready for engagement. So this was given back in September, and before that we did do a right round process with government just to make sure that everyone was happy with what we were going to be putting out there. And this engagement was really, really useful because then what we were able to do was take comments from that engagement to then help guide further policy development, which is what we've been doing up until now. And then also linked to that, we've had compatibility testing. That's a bit of a mouthful word. And that is basically where we've had our draft set of marine plan policies, but within them there's various different levels of strength within them. So we've got our musts, our shoulds or coulds and wills, and basically how do they all fit and align together. So that is some members of my team have been undertaking that work. And then looking back at this marine planning wheel, we've obviously got the black band in the middle section there. So that is our assessment. So alongside these other steps, we have our sustainability appraisal and our HRAs, which are also undertaken. But they do sit alongside the marine planning process. And that is basically to make sure that the work that we're doing is done in a sustainable way. So again, that's being done by members of my team and also with the assistance from contractors. So this slide just is showing some previous past engagement that we've had. It is very key to and important that everyone has the ability to say how they feel the East Marine Plan replacement process should be going and to get their input, as it is really important that those with an interest in the East Marine Plan area and also more widely the UK marine space are able to have their say. So yeah, this is just showing we've done several online and also in-person sessions. So I did say I was going to do a bit more of a spotlight on the options process. So what this is essentially to develop reasonable alternatives to delivering and achieving our plan objectives. And again, the legislation comes from this, the Strategic Environmental Assessment, which I think is quite nicely acronymed C. And that is basically the requirement for what we need, why we're needing to do this. But what those options are, as we're starting to assess them, we need to make sure that they hit 3 criteria. So they need to be reasonable, deliverable, and also meaningfully different. We need to make sure they're actually going to be different if we're looking at how we're going to be doing these 3 options. And so we've came up with 3 options for how to deliver the East Marine Plan. And what would it look like? The first one was baseline, but more like baseline plus. So what this was is we would take the North East Marine Plan, which is one of our more recently published marine plans, and then we would align this to our East evidence base and the issues that we raised from that previous stage, and then bring the East Marine Plan into alignment with the rest of our marine plans. The second option was focusing on the priorities for the East. So we're not saying national priorities, but those priorities that we found for the East Marine Plan area. Then the third option was to try and make the plans more spatial and temporal. So moving to more fine-grained policy development and fine-grained mapping, really trying to help and assist people who use the plans to be able to make decisions using those more fine-grained mapping, for example. And we did work through all these options alongside with the SA, and the outcome was actually that there was not a clear option identified as the preferred option. So instead, what we've taken is a more combined and almost staggered approach. So we've adopted an approach that where we started off at baseline as a starting point, and then this is all for like when we're drafting plan policies. So starting off as baseline, and then we try and incorporate national policy and priorities to the East where possible, and then where we could, if we had the evidence and underlying data for that, we could then prepare more spatially prescriptive policy. But it is also worth noting that we actually haven't started off completely from scratch at this point. There is quite a lot of spatial detail within existing policies as well, and also tools like Explore Marine Plans, which is our online mapping service, which has data layers applicable to various different plan policies. So whilst there was an aspiration for one of the options to be more spatially and temporal specific at a plan level approach, might not have been able to go as far as possible with that, with the evidence and the database that's underlining it available at this time. But there is still a lot of spatial elements within the plans themselves as well, the plan policies. So what's new is we have roughly 33 new policies, which some of you, there's some areas which you can see on the screen here. I'm not going to go into in depth on all of them because we will be here all day, but just to touch on a few, is we have 2 new cable policies to strengthen the existing cable routes and to protect potential sites that link into strategic energy planning. We have a new fishing policy that links to around supporting engagement with the fishing industry. And then we also have a new topic around ecosystem health that links both climate change and biodiversity objectives together. So next steps, we're going to continue to work on plan development alongside the assessment process. We also do have our draft plan consultation at the end of this year. And then we also, my particular focus as monitoring evaluation lead within the team, we're also looking to see how these East Marine Plan policies, new and amended, could be monitored once they're in place. And we're also planning to run implementation sessions. So as I said, I'm the monitoring evaluation lead within the team, so I do want just a little bit of a quick spotlight on that within the process as well. It's a statutory requirement to monitor and report on the plans every 3 years. And to do this, we undertake 3 types of monitoring, which you can see there. One of them being process, and that's really looking at the development and use of marine plans, i.e. how are those plans and policies being used. Then we have the outcome. This is really making sure that are the plans having their intended effect, how is this working in the real world as well. And then we have context. So this is an assessment to kind of look at what the legislative or regulatory changes are and that may affect the relevance of the plan. And to allow this, we run annual surveys on plan and policy use. We also have indicators to monitor whether the policies and plans are working. And we also utilise analytics, like I said, from our mapping service, such as Explore Marine Plans. And we are currently in the process of developing new indicators for new and amended marine plan policies. So as EastMe is a really great collective of various different organisations and teams coming together, we've touched on data already quite a bit today and how it needs to be vice versa between different organisations. But if you do have any, if you feel like your teams, organisations has any evidence or data that are applicable to our plan policy areas, fisheries, underwater noise, aggregates for example, then please do feel free to get in touch. This is just a timeline of what our next steps are. So obviously we've looked at the past 12 months. This is what we're happening in the next 12 months. And then you can see we've got the plan drafting consultation process at the end of this year. So yes, keeping in touch. So normally, Mark is our East Coastal Planner. He would be normally typically presenting to you here today, but unfortunately you couldn't attend, so you got me instead. But if you wanted to get in touch with Mark about anything about marine planning for the East Marine Plan area specifically, please do reach out. And then, or myself, if you want to chat to anything about monitoring and evaluation, I'm more than happy to have a chat. Thank you very much. That was me.